Our second reader is the author of the novel The Misadventures of Sulliver Pong, which you can purchase right here after the show. The book was an Amazon national bestseller in Asian American literature, a finalist for the James Jones First Novel Fellowship, and a semifinalist for the Big Moose Prize from Black Lawrence Press. He has been awarded fellowships and artist residencies, including one from the McDowell Colony, and his work has appeared or is forthcoming in publications such as Salon, Electric Literature, The Rumpus, Kenyon Review, Prairie Schooner, and elsewhere. He is also an assistant fiction editor at Newfound Journal and lives in Brooklyn. Please welcome Leland Cheuk. Good height, Lance?
I think so. Pretty short. So. Lefty loosey, right?
Don't like that yet.
There we go. All right. Now it hits me back. Hey guys. Great to see you. And thanks to Andrew and Eden for having me. So I'm going to read from my novel, The Misadventures of Sulliver Pong. It's a black comedy about a very dysfunctional Chinese-American family. So the main character is named Sulliver, and at the start of the story, he's married and living in Copenhagen, and he feels like he has escaped his family. The men of this family have all been prone to bad fortune and bad behavior. And he thinks he's escaped, but his dad actually comes back. His dad is named Saul, and he's the mayor of the hometown that he's from, and he's kind of a Donald Trump-esque figure. Saul actually visits Sulliver unannounced in Copenhagen and tells him that his mother is sick and he needs to come home, but refuses to reveal any more details. And Sulliver, smelling a rat, gives his dad the benefit of the doubt to his detriment. And then he flies home for the first time in 20 years. He walks off the plane immediately into a press conference where his dad appoints him to the city official position. And then in the ensuing argument, he tears his very delicate groin and has to stay in the hometown much longer. So that's the background. That's the background to the scene. Hope that isn't too confusing. And this is shortly after he's been injured. When I was in grade school, my father was driving me home one day when I excitedly shared with him the legend of George Washington and his cherry tree chopping confession. I cannot tell a lie. When I repeated his father's alleged response, the truth was worth more than 1,000 trees, even if they were blossomed with silver and had leaves of purest gold, Saul guffawed and guffawed. I can't wait to move you to a private school, he said, mussing my hair. That summer, we took a vacation to Hong Kong. While Mama visited her side of the family, Saul took me on a walk. I followed him, not knowing where we were going. He would point out an occasional landmark, like the clock tower at Misadventures or a Chinese junk in Victoria Harbor. Soon the storefronts and boulevard traffic disappeared, and my father and I were walking narrow streets and alleys. I remembered the sewer stink of the streets, the Chinese characters I couldn't read in red and green neon. There seemed to be 3 or 4 girls in hot pants in front of every door. Many years later, on a business trip with a client who enjoyed underage Filipino girls, I would discover that my father and I had been in Wan Chai. After Saul shook his head at the girls in front of several of the clubs, he finally picked one to enter. He introduced 2 of the girls to me. I was 10 years old at the time. My father and I sat at the bar, and 4 girls gathered around us. They loomed over me, one with an arm on my shoulder, another with a hand on my thigh. My father had a girl on each arm. "Sully, would you like to buy these girls a drink?" he asked. "I don't have any money." "Well, of course I'll pay," he said, "but only if you want to buy them drinks. I don't care." "No, Sully, I want you to decide." I shrugged. "Sure." My father glared at me, grabbed me by the arm, pushed aside the girls, and dragged me toward the exit. Behind us, I could hear an older woman shouting in Cantonese for us to come back. My father turned around and cussed at her, and soon we were headed back the way we came. "They were trying to cheat you," Saul said. "If you buy them drinks, they come back with a glass of water and charge you $100. 3 or 4 drinks later, you're paying them $400 for nothing, not even a lousy blowjob. Always go to the expensive clubs for women. Anything worth having is worth paying for. In this world, people will try to cheat you. Only dumb people let themselves get cheated. Remember that. I didn't know, I said. I have to get you out of that white school, he said. These white people are teaching you nonsense. Do you think the truth is really worth gold? I don't think my teacher really meant gold. Saul stopped in his tracks, and I stopped with him. A young apron-wearing man with a cigarette dangling from his lips bumped into my father and proceeded to cuss him out with a medley of colorful Cantonese insults. Your mother's pussy stings, fuck your sister. My father cussed him back with his own medley. I hope your whole family dies, fuck your mother. Then he turned to me and said, Sully, if we went to the bank and tried to deposit truth, they wouldn't take it. And almost 30 years later, it is I who sit in a cell scribbling my version of the truth, hoping someone will take my deposit. My cellmate Manny, ironically, is here for bank robbery. During the stick-up on a 95-degree afternoon in Old Town, he kept complaining that his ski mask was making his face hot and sweaty. In full view of the cameras, he put his gun down at the teller window and started clawing at his face with both hands until the mask came off. How relieved Manny was to free that meaty face, and how chagrined he was to find the teller pointing his own gun back at him. Manny and his fellow robbers looked at the woman. She was a tiny old lady. Manny's gun was shaking in her frail hands. Manny and his friends exchanged glances, and then they unloaded their weapons on her. To hear Manny tell his story, you might think that the woman was a steroid-taking ex-bodybuilder turned bank teller who decided to hop the counter, wrestle the gun from his grasp, rip the ski mask off his face, and stick the pistol in Manny's mouth before his fellow thieves blew the woman's brains out and saved his life. Yes, the security cameras don't lie, but even Manny, whose IQ is in the double digits, is smarter than I am. He is from the Saul Pong School of Life. The truth ain't worth much. Saul agreed to meet us for dinner at a Chinese restaurant named Barry Buck Roger Fong's. A giant red and gold papier-mâché phoenix dangled from the ceiling. It reminded me simultaneously of Oscar Wilde's tomb and a piñata. Mama went on and on about how she didn't know why my father always chose this restaurant, that food was awful, and she hated running into the wives of the other city officials. I waited in silence, non-responsive. I let her blow off steam. When Saul finally arrived, he was wearing a long, dark wool coat and leather gloves, despite the fact it was 90 degrees outside. Mama and I were wearing shorts. Saul greeted a patron and shook hands with the server before finally joining us at our table. How are you feeling, Sully? Saul undid his coat, took off his gloves, unbuttoned his suit jacket, and proceeded to inadvertently knock over my crutches, which had been leaning against the edge of the booth. He motioned for a waiter to pick them up. So good to be together as a family again. Why are you dressed so warmly, Mama asked. Did you just come from the hotel? I'm surprised you're not naked underneath the coat. My father glared at her. He smiled at me and said, the air conditioning is very cold at City Hall. So many meetings, so many people want to see me. He picked up the teapot and tried to fill my cup, but Mama placed a hand over it. I'm his mother, she said. I pour his tea. My father shook his head and rested the pot. Mama poured my tea. Why isn't Elena coming? Saul said. What kind of wife doesn't visit her husband when he's in the hospital? Do you need me to pay for the flight? Are you kidding? Mama said. That's too expensive. We have no money left because you're out wooing younger women. I can afford the flight, I said. Why are you in such a bad mood, Sully? My father asked. Why, I wonder, Father? Why might I be in such a bad mood? Could it be that I have been coaxed on an 8,000-mile journey under false pretenses? Or could it be that I unwittingly walked into a press conference where I've been appointed to some city job I didn't fully understand? Shouldn't I have been in a gay mood? Shouldn't I have been skipping fields of poppies hand in hand with my father while we inspected the new showgirls at the Pong Eliano? I chopsticked a salty peanut and filled my mouth with tea. I looked my father in the eye, thinking I had truth on my side. The tea scalded, but I gave it a rinsey swish and swallowed hard. Mama says she never saw a doctor. I never saw a doctor, Mama repeated. My father examined me, brows furrowed, and the sagging skin of his face contrasted with his bleached teeth and made his face look like a rubber mold. He was wearing makeup. What about Dr. Clango? Saul asked Mama in Cantonese. He tossed his hair and turned an ear toward her. He knows nothing, she spat. He's black. He's from France, my father barked. Several patrons looked at us. I told my parents to quiet down. Saul said that Quango suspected Mama was a manic depressive, but couldn't be certain without further evaluation. Quango had scheduled monthly appointments Mama never kept. Is this true? I asked Mama. She ignored me. You paid your black friend to poison me, she said to Saul. He threw his hands up and shook his head to the heavens, his complexion purpling. See what I have to deal with, Sully? All she does is sit around and watch TV. She doesn't take care of the house or do any of the gardening or cooking, and she hates the blacks. She's the one that's lying. She knows nothing about what I do, what we are planning. We are not planning anything. You know I love the blacks, Sully, my father added. Why don't you tell Sully where you're sleeping, she said. Bitch, my father muttered, his lower lip protruding and mouth hanging open. Dad, tell him where you're bringing all your whores. Cunt, my father whispered. Stop, I said. More patrons' heads turned. My parents glared silently at each other. You've lied to me, both of you, I said. Again and again and again. I'm not here to get involved in your lives. I'm a very, very busy business owner in my own right. I don't have time to care about your business or your politics or, frankly, your marriage. I've always thought you two should get divorced. Mama began to cry softly. I looked away and told her to stop crying. Saul stared at his joined hands as if he were praying. A divorce would hurt my numbers, he said quietly. He glanced askance at me. The Pong Foundation would be good for both of us, Sully. I need your help. Saul went on about how the redevelopment would benefit Old Town economically and how he had a lot of his own money invested in the project, which meant it was practically my money since it was family money. I shook my head, sipped my tea, and waited for him to finish. I refilled the cups and looked at Mama, who was red-faced with tears, then Saul, who was licking his teeth. If anything ever happened to either of you, I would be here, I said. For instance, if Mama was sick, Mama is sick, Saul said. I'm not, she said. Let me finish, I said, holding a finger up. If either of you were sick, I would be here. I know we've had our tough times, but you are my parents. It is my obligation. It would be the right thing to do. How insincere I sounded. I might as well have been reading aloud from an unfamiliar book. I reached out to both of them, found a neutral, fleshy part of their respective shoulders to pat. You sound so happy about it, Mama said. What the hell do you expect? I said. Have you ever supported me? No. You just sent your little pictures of Cantonese girls. They spoke so well, Mama explained. I turned to Saul. And you? I want you to do a press conference. Saul rolled his eyes. You're still talking about that? I've already apologized. No, you haven't. I have, he said. Then his eyes narrowed. Haven't I? No. Saul pursed his lips. Oh, I thought I did. Look, I don't live here, I said. I don't work here. My wife lives in Denmark. I said the words extra slowly and loudly this time, because clearly my message had not been getting through. Saul sniffed and looked down into his teacup, swirled the liquid. I don't know what's so great about Amsterdam. Everyone speaks English anyway. Copenhagen. I'm not lying to you, Mama said. The doctor was not a real doctor. She stabbed a finger at my father. He's looking for an excuse to fuck young twat. Saul slammed both palms on the table, toppling our cups. He backhanded the soy sauce bottle, sending it bouncing and spilling on the floor. Patrons and staff alike gasped. He stood and retrieved a lengthy billfold from his jacket and flipped $200 bills on the table. How often does Sully come home? You were determined to spread your crazy lies and make him look like a fool, or make me look like a fool. Because you are, Mama screamed. I can't talk to a crazy woman. Saul tried to look me in the eye, but I would not meet his gaze. I was seething. I'm not the bad guy, Sully, he said. He huffed toward the exit, then slowed. He waved and shook hands with the maitre d', made some smiling small talk, shook hands again, and squeezed the man's elbow before walking out. I stared at the tint of the spreading tea on the tablecloth. The dark leaves clumped at the center of the sagging amoeba shape. My mother's shoulders trembled. She was silent, save the occasional sniffle. A baby began to cry in the far corner of the restaurant. I loosened my jaw and looked hard at my mother. Dr. Quango? Your father ordered him to drug me and put me in the crazy house, Mama said, her eyes darting left and right. Talk to him yourself. She rummaged through the purse, her purse, and handed me a business card of thin stock and bent corners that read, Murray Jean-Baptiste Quango, MD, Quango Psychiatric Services, clinical care, consultation, collaboration. See you there.
Thanks.